This is Women Road Warriors with Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro. From the corporate office to the cab of a truck, they're here to inspire and empower women in all professions. So gear down, sit back, and enjoy.
Welcome to Women Road Warriors. We're an award-winning show that works to inspire and empower women in every profession. Our goal is to power women on their road to success. We tackle all kinds of topics and work to encourage women to be their very best with informative guests and women who've been champions. I'm Shelley.
And I'm Kathy.
No topic is taboo on our show. We tackle the tough topics along with the not-so-tough topics, and we like to feature experts and celebrities who can assist women in being the very best they can be. Burnout impacts everyone, especially women who do way too much and don't set good boundaries. It affects women in all walks of life. It's an unfortunate thing that can happen in the medical community, too. It happened to Dr. Sharon McLaughlin, who now helps people with these issues. Dr. McLaughlin is an expert and speaker in the field of women's empowerment. She's the founder of a women's physician network, Female Physician Entrepreneurs. After experiencing burnout as a plastic surgeon, she embarked on a journey of self-discovery. Her focus is on confidence building, effective communication, and setting healthy boundaries. Dr. McLaughlin is an executive coach and has authored a number of books that cover everything from burnout to building confidence and self-esteem. Her latest book, Thriving After Burnout, is a compilation of stories from women doctors who share tips and strategies on what helped them during their burnout. These stories apply to everyone, as many women experience burnout. Dr. McLaughlin's podcast is called Build Unshakeable Confidence, and it covers all kinds of topics like creating a sustainable life you love, effective communication in business, improving your credit score, and other topics. We have Dr. McLaughlin on the show today to offer her insights for our listeners. Welcome, Dr. McLaughlin. Thank you for being on the show.
Welcome.
Shelley and Kathy, thank you so much for having me.
Is it all right if I refer to you as Sharon?
Please do. Yes.
Okay. Terrific. You know, Sharon, I think it's wonderful what you're doing. It's empowering so many people. Burnout is such an insidious thing, and it sneaks up on people. What was your breaking point that made you realize you needed a change? And what motivated you to help other people?
The breaking point was my dad getting sick. I believe that we don't know when burnout is occurring. It happened a couple of times in my life. So the first time was I was in private practice. I was still married, but married, a child, and trying to manage the patients as well as manage the staff. And when I first started my endeavor down plastic surgery, I was single. It was a lot easier, actually. But then I met my husband. And so now I had to answer to somebody. And then I had a child. And I wanted to be there for her. And I felt like I was being pulled in so many different directions. And I didn't know anything different. I looked around and this is what other women were doing. And I thought, okay, this is the norm. We just get pulled in many different directions. And these feelings of being tired or being exhausted, if we just push through it, it'll get better. But as time went on, I kept thinking, well, how is it going to get better? Like, there's really no light at the end of the tunnel. When I was training, there was a residency and a lot of hours. But we knew eventually we would finish and graduate and have that diploma on the wall, right? But with life, I'm like, well, where's the light at the end of the tunnel? Like, is it that I'm going to retire like X amount of years from now? So I believe that there's always life events that affect us. And for me, it was my dad getting sick. My parents were older when they had me. I was one of those, unplanned pregnancies. My mom was in her 40s. My dad was close to 50. And I enjoyed their time with them so much. I had a lovely childhood in the sense that it was open. My house was open to everybody, neighbors, strangers, everybody. And that's just how I grew up. And it's one of the things that I didn't realize, like we developed this norm around us, right? Like, what's norm?
Sure.
And now that I'm older, I see that not all households are like that. So the bottom line is I was close with my dad. And this was when I was in my 40s, and I was thankful that I had him for that long. But he was sick and he was terminal, and I knew that it would just be a few more weeks. And I truly wanted to spend time with him. And I was being pulled in so many different directions that even when I was with him, I was getting phone calls and text, and even though I had people covering me, there was a lot of like, we know your dad's sick, or we know that, you're on leave, but we need help with this or that. And it really got me thinking, because as he's lying in bed, I'm wondering, geez, I got to this point. It was so important for me at 13 when I decided to become a physician that I was going to do this. So now I'm a physician. I never really thought I would be married with a child, but I had that. And I was like, most people would look from the outside and say, wow, this is great. You have a great life. And I wasn't feeling like I had a great life inside. I wasn't happy. And I don't even know if it was depression. I'm going to say it's not, because when I had some time off, I felt totally better. I just knew that I didn't want to keep going like this. I never had suicidal thoughts, but lying with him, like not lying with him, but being in the chair next to him, thinking about this, realizing that, we're all going to die at one point, really just had a lot of thoughts. I did a lot of soul searching during those weeks. And I came to the conclusion that I knew that I wouldn't be doing this for much longer, that eventually something would have to change. And that was in 2009. And I actually didn't step away from medicine totally until about 2014. But that was the event that got me thinking. And I think that for most part, like I mentioned, there's some event that happens in your life. It could be marriage, like infidelity. It could be a sick child. It could be sickness, like I mentioned, of a parent. Something happens to make us step back and say, okay, I've been doing this, but this is no longer what I want to do. And I think this is something that we could all resonate with, right?
Oh, absolutely. It's kind of like the straw that broke the camel's back. And certainly in the medical field, that's so stressful. Just the ramp up with the training and everything. Kathy, you went to nursing school, so you understand that too.
I do. I think I had two burnouts, and one was kind of I was trying to advance my nursing qualifications. And so I was going to school full time. I was working during the day. I was working the evening shift at the hospital. I'd come home. I was a single parent of a 3-year-old daughter, and my mom was moved in helping me babysit, and she was drinking. So I was trying, like, heavily. So I was trying to juggle everything. I began to drink, and then it turns out, I was a big mess. I ended up having to let go of school, and then my drinking just escalated, and then depression hit. The choices I was making was, really bad. Fast forward 7.5 years of poor choices, domestic violence, increase in drinking. My burnout, as Shelley, as you know, I had 10 patients to take care of, and I thought I was fine, but I knew kind of that I was tired. I didn't realize what burnout really was. So I showed up to work on night shift. I had 10 patients to take care of, and I'm looking at my sheet, and I just couldn't read the words. I couldn't, my brain wouldn't function anymore. It was like I was reading a different language, and I'm rubbing my eyes and I'm trying to see, and I couldn't understand. And I knew then that I was done, that I couldn't pretend that I was strong, that I was a survivor, that, you put on those masks of, I'm a professional, I should get this. And what I did is I turned around, and when I recognized that I was done, I handed my sheet back to the supervisor. I said, I quit. I grabbed my jacket. I'm in my nursing scrubs, and I went from the medical unit down to the psychiatric unit, which is locked. And, I'm pounding on the door, let me in, because in between the two floors, I lost my mind. Once I accepted that I was done, my brain just shut down, and I was able to release finally 40 years of trauma. And when I hit the psych unit, I'm pounding on the locked doors, like, let me in. And they actually calling security, get her out. And 2 guards dragged me down literally dragged me down, because by then I'm a complete mess. Dragged me down to the ER, into the rubber room, so I wouldn't hurt myself, and I could see a psychiatric doctor. And it was the first time at the age of 40 that I started. I was able to talk about what was going on, and that was in 2008, and that was the beginning of my journey to change. But it took all that. It took for me to completely, kind of lose my marbles, and to shut down. But as I talked to Shelley about this a lot, we shouldn't. Why do we why do we push ourselves to get to that point? There should be
Yeah.
warning signs. Why do we do that? Why do we wait
Yeah.
till we're there to we're at our wit's end?
Why do you think that is, Sharon?
Yeah, because of boundaries, because there's a challenge, right? Like we're supposed to be the nurturers, we're supposed to be helping out, we're supposed to be saying yes as women, this is what we do.
Mm-hmm.
And we just give and give until you truly can't give anymore. Part of the reason why I wanted to leave medicine is because I'd formed ulcerative colitis, a type of ulcerative colitis. I spent more time in the bathroom. Like I had to see patients with making sure there was a bathroom open. And if anybody went in that bathroom, I was upset. Like, no, this is my bathroom. Like you don't really clean a bathroom in an office, but I did. And we do this until, Kathy, like you made a really good point, like how heartbreaking that you had to get to that point. And unfortunately, how do I say this? I can only speak for myself, but I feel like when we get to that point, it is part of the responsibility lies within us, that we weren't able to speak up early enough to protect our own mental and physical health. So people around us will always be pushing. I think that we set a precedent when we say yes a lot and we don't say no. I know myself when I started forming boundaries, it was hard because people got angry at me, but I did them because I know that I needed these boundaries. And when I look back on it, or even as I'm experiencing this today, if they're getting mad at me, like because this is something I've allowed, but I'm no longer allowing this to come into my life for my own good, then I don't need to be around these people. So for the women listening out there, for everyone listening out there, when you start setting boundaries, when you start saying no, when you start making yourself a priority, you will get pushed back. And personally, some of this is very hurtful, right? Because we're people pleasers. We want to see everybody happy with us. We want to see everybody happy. We want people to like us. But, and Kathy, I don't mean to use it as a reference, like I certainly, like after all those years of training, I walked away, right? Like I didn't even care about selling the practice. I just wanted to walk away. There's some state regulations that I had to do as far as remaining open 30 days after I put out the letter that I would be closing. And so I planned it out. I didn't have a chance. I didn't want to just walk away, but it was all planned. Like my dad was sick in 2009. And I spent the next few years thinking about my exit strategy and why I'd spent so much time getting to that point. And Kathy, you mentioned the point that you were at. Like, it is such a shame that we ourselves it's outside forces, right? The way that society is expecting a lot from women. It's the corporate mentality of push, push, push. Well, push them as much as we could possibly push them. It is our personality that we're not going to give up, that some people would say no early on. And I believe that people know that, so that they know who they can push and who they can't push. And if we take responsibility for putting this wall up against us, for protecting ourselves, really for hugging ourselves, like to think about it as a hug. You're hugging yourself so that you can protect yourself. There's no other way to put it. We need to do that.
Yeah, it's so important.
Stay tuned for more of Women Road Warriors coming up.
Dean Michael, the tax doctor here. I have one question for you. Do you want to stop worrying about the IRS? If the answer is yes, then look no further. I've been around for years. I've helped countless people across the country, and my success rate speaks for itself. So now you know where to find good, honest help with your tax problems. What are you waiting for? If you owe more than $10,000 to the IRS or haven't filed in years, call me now at 888-557-4020 or go to mytaxhelpmd.com for a free consultation and get your life back.
Industry movement Trucking Moves America Forward is telling the story of the industry. Our safety champions, the women of trucking, independent contractors, the next generation of truckers, and more. Help us promote the best of our industry. Share your story and what you love about trucking. Share images of a moment you're proud of. And join us on social media. Learn more at truckingmovesamerica.com.
Welcome back to Women Road Warriors with Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro.
If you're enjoying this informative episode of Women Road Warriors, I wanted to mention Kathy and I explore all kinds of topics that will power you on the road to success. We feature a lot of expert interviews. Plus, we feature celebrities and women who've been trailblazers. Please check out our podcast at womenroadwarriors.com and click on our episodes page. We're also available wherever you listen to podcasts, on all the major podcast channels like Spotify, Apple, YouTube, Amazon Music, Audible, you name it. Check us out and bookmark our podcast. Also, don't forget to follow us on social media. We're on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, Pinterest, LinkedIn, YouTube, and other sites. And tell others about us. We want to help as many women as possible. Too many women are pulled into too many different directions. Women often experience burnout more than men with work and family obligations when we set poor boundaries and give way too much. This is especially true in the medical fields. Dr. Sharon McLaughlin experienced this firsthand and decided to pivot in a way to help other women. She's the author of the book Thriving After Burnout and the host of the podcast Build Unshakeable Confidence. She empowers women on creating a sustainable life. We're learning that we need to speak up early enough to protect our own mental and physical health and get okay with saying no. Kathy, you had some thoughts for Dr. McLaughlin?
What you were saying about boundaries, it's interesting because after that episode, like I'd become quite the alcoholic, and so I had to go into a treatment center. And it was in the treatment center in 2009 when it was a year-long program for women where you lived in house and you had treatment Monday to Friday, learning about anger management, boundaries, codependency, self-esteem, sexual assault, all this stuff. Well, it was my counselor, and I'm 40 by now, right? And it was the counselor who taught me about boundaries. I was so naive I'm saying naive. I didn't know what the word meant. I said, what? You mean I could say no? I had zero, coming up from a very dysfunctional family, I had no concept that I didn't have to be a doormat, that I didn't have to be a people pleaser, that I had choices, that I could actually say no. So when she taught me, she literally had to teach me how to say no, because it was so difficult for me, because I was such a chameleon, wanting, people, being that people pleaser, transforming myself into whatever that person in front of me was expecting out of someone. And so it was a really, really long process, and learning to sit in my uncomfortableness by saying no. But I got to tell you, since from 2009, when I learned that no, to now, that one word has given me more of a backbone than anything in my life, I think, honestly. And I speak a lot at women's shelters, and that's what I talk about is no. You have to learn to say no.
Yeah.
And not give a reason why. Like Shelley,
Yep.
you say often, no is a full sentence, right?
Right, yeah. Well, what kind of popped in my head, it seems like society and in social constructs expect women to say yes. They take a no from a man with much more acceptance. I think they're shocked when women say no.
I agree.
Yeah.
I'm going to take it one step back. I'm going to say that women are expected to do more right from the beginning. They're asked to do more, or different things, right? Like office house cleaning, or whatever it is. Like there's actually studies to show that women are asked more about office house cleaning than a man. You wouldn't ask a man to do that. So then they don't have to even say no to men, because they were never asked to begin with. Yeah. And Kathy,
good point.
You mentioned growing up, and it's true. If we didn't have role models to follow, we wouldn't know, right? Because if our moms or parents, people around us, our siblings were people pleasers, that's what we know. I remember working in a corporate job a number of years back, and I was in the room with a colleague, and a man had asked us to do something, and a really great guy, nothing bad to say about him, but she's like, I'm not doing that. Just said it like that. And I was like, my jaw dropped, because I came from plastic surgery. We didn't say no. Like we were asked to do something, we did it. And I was like, wow, I have the option of saying no. Just like you were mentioning the woman in the shelter, you don't know until you're surrounded by it, or until you see it. Well, what a great point. It's nothing like a comparison, although I just compared like the woman in the shelter. they need help and support, but how great it is that you are able to get in there and talk to them and be a role model for them.
Oh, it's been transformational. Just because, I mean, I should be dead 10 times over just from domestic violence and just like some horrible things that have happened to me in life. But now my job, operating the largest mining equipment in the world, has given, and the fact combined with my learning of boundaries and codependency and, just everything that I learned in that treatment center now has given me the confidence and the voice and the leadership skills to be able to go into those shelters or the juvenile homes or the schools or even the prisons that I visit from time to time and say, hey, listen, just, your past does not define your future. And you are a whole package deal, and everything that you do starts with boundaries and codependency and your own self-belief and the narrative that you're creating in your own mind, right? Are you a prisoner in your own mind? Or what are you going to do about the changes that you're not happy with? Or what about the toxic environment, the people that you're around? It's not just one thing, it's a combination of everything.
Yep.
And me, for myself personally, that's what I bring forth. It's not just the one thing. I mean, my job is a great job, but it's not just that. It's everything, right? And if I can use my time, I mean, I'm 54 now, but if I can use the time that I have left to empower everyone around me, well, you're darn right I'm going to do it. I'm going to spend every waking moment trying to achieve that. And thus interviewing people that are wonderful, such as yourself, to continue putting forth that momentum.
Those words are really heartwarming. Thank you.
Your messages too, Sharon. You're making such a difference. What you're doing, Sharon, is absolutely wonderful because it reaches all women. And unfortunately, I think, I don't know, you probably have the stats. Do women experience burnout more than men? Because it seems like just the way things are structured, when we're in a profession, we feel like we have to do it better than everybody because we have to prove ourselves just because we're women. And I'm sure you encountered maybe some of that in the medical community, didn't you?
The stats do show that women have a higher rate of burnout. Imposter syndrome was thought to be higher in women, although people feel like maybe it was the way the studies were done, more equal. So men feel imposter syndrome too. I bring up imposter syndrome because I think that contributes to burnout as well. Yeah. When you're doubting yourself in your own field, that's a problem. But why do you get that way? And I think it usually has to do with you're giving, you're not doing that self-care, your lack of sleep, you don't know any other way, and you start to lose yourself, you lose your identity. And then before you know it, what used to be very comfortable, like a job that you were doing, now it was second nature. Now it becomes questionable. Like, am I good at what I'm doing? You're not feeling good inside. So how could you think that your work on the outside is going to be good? And I think it just wears and tears on you. And that's part of the problem with burnout as well. Many people that burn out, they have that imposter syndrome first.
Interesting. I didn't know that occurs before burnout. Okay. Now, imposter syndrome, is that something that can go back to childhood, or is that something that gradually develops?
I think it gradually develops. Nothing happens really overnight, right? But the burnout, that can go back because of our expectations of when we were writing that book, there was a complete, many different women submitted, and there's definitely a cultural norm, like in the Indian culture, South Asian, the feeling is, okay, you're going to be a lawyer, a doctor, that's it. And it was like that from the time they were young. That's all they heard. So when they had feelings of, well, I don't even want to be a doctor anymore, it was a real problem. If they didn't get 100 on the test, some of them, that and it's not just South Asian, it's, different households in general, that feeling of failure, like it could be in 95, but that wasn't good enough for them because in their mind, it wasn't good enough, right? So it really does tear you down. It makes you question, how good are you? And so you have that as a child. And then as you get in, it's still there as an adult. It may not come out in the same way, but it's deep rooted. It presents itself as those self-limiting beliefs. And it does come up every once in a while, a bad review at work, a mistake. Sometimes we all make mistakes. We're human.
Yeah.
But that we beat ourselves up over it because we made a mistake, and we don't make mistakes, but everybody makes mistakes.
I used to be like that for most of my life, and I was never good enough. That feeling of unworthiness, it was like a jacket that I wore, a coat. And it's interesting because it's only recently, in the last, let's see, maybe 5 years, I was training on the biggest grader in the world, up in Canada, which is bigger than an 18-wheeler. It's so massive. I mean, pictures don't even do it justice. Anyway, my trainer, who's one of the top, in Canada, anyway, he said, Kathy, because this thing, it takes a year to learn and train on. And I'm struggling to be that perfectionist, trying to, get it right. And not to mention, I'm one of the few women on my crew. There's only 7 of us out of 170. And so I have that unperceived pressure that I need to perform above and beyond, right? In order to gain their respect or whatever, right? Anyway, so here I am, and I'm really struggling, and I'm making 100 mistakes a day because this blade is 23 feet long, 24 feet long, sorry, 3 feet high. I mean, it's huge, and I'm constantly making mistakes, and I'm really hard on myself. And my trainer pulled me aside, and he said, Kathy, if you want to succeed in on any piece of equipment that you're going to train on, you need to learn 2 words: good enough. And he said, you need to look at your surroundings. You're never going to get it perfect here, ever. But you need to be able to accept that what you did was good enough for what you need, for the job required. And he said, I want you to bring that home to your personal life, and to not set so much pressure on yourself. And I'll be darned if those 2 words stick with me every day. Good enough. Because I still tend to be that perfectionist.
Me too. Yeah.
Right.
And it makes sense because we're not perfect, even though we strive to be that way. I remember as a child, perfection. That was something that I had to have all the time. If I didn't get an A, I got upset.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Shelley, was that your parents expecting that, or you brought that on yourself? Do you feel like you got more attention when you got the A?
Yeah, maybe it was that. I was doing that, I think, more for my mom. I wanted to really impress her. It was something, I think, that I brought that on myself. And I remember one of the teachers, I guess, had told Mom, she gets really, really upset if she doesn't get an A. She comes up and tries to negotiate with me, So yeah, the negotiation skills were something that was something good for me to learn at the time. But you're not going to be perfect every time. And when I got to middle school and high school, you had high honors and all of that, and I was just going for that, always. I was a goal setter, which was good, but yeah, hard on myself, definitely.
Yeah, so much of this is goal setting and what our expectations are of ourselves, right? And how we grew up, and currently what our goals are, and to accept that it's okay. Kathy, I love that you said we're good enough, right? Like that, what a great trainer to be able to say we're good enough. And Shelley, the same as you, right?
Yeah.
Stay tuned for more of Women Road Warriors coming up.
Trucking Moves America Forward, or TMAF, is building a positive image of trucking by telling the story of the hardworking drivers and industry professionals who support the industry. And you can be a part of it. Learn more about TMAF and how you can join and be a part of the industry movement working to build a strong image of trucking by visiting TMAF's website at truckingmovesamerica.com. You can also follow us on Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, and our latest channel, TikTok.
Welcome back to Women Road Warriors with Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro.
Boundaries are key to overcoming burnout. Women have a tough time saying no and taking care of themselves. And women are expected to do more, so it's conditioning. It's a lifetime of messaging like this, to do more than they should all the time. Women also suffer from more burnout, and they can also have imposter syndrome and can be hard on themselves. Dr. Sharon McLaughlin works with women on how to rekindle their potential and build a sustainable life with proven techniques to recover after experiencing serious burnout. She's the author of Thriving After Burnout and the host of Build Unshakeable Confidence. Sharon, do you think women tend to be harder on themselves than men do?
I do think that men could be hard on themselves. However, the word resilience comes back in my mind, but it's not, it's a mental resilience. Like, oh yeah, just accept it, and like they're okay with failure. Failure is good. You learn from it. It's not going to bring me down. I'm going to go and continue on. Where a woman would sit and ruminate about it, and it would bring her down. So I think it's different in that regard, how it's perceived and how it's dealt with.
Well, when you think about it, the perfection that society expects, and we grow up looking at all of these beautiful people, women looking absolutely perfectly coiffed and perfect everything, especially now in social media. Certainly, Sharon, being a plastic surgeon, I'm sure you saw that with patients, women who came in and they wanted to have perfection. Maybe they were trying to seek outside themselves for something that they had an emotional deficit.
Absolutely. Unfortunately. I say unfortunately because no matter what was done, they're never going to be happy with themselves. And that's a problem, right? There's a term called body dysmorphic syndrome, but it doesn't even have to have like the technical psychiatric term to it. It could just be that women are themselves just not happy. And it is a shame, right? We see this so much, like in the movie industry, really any industry, newscasting. The women, men and women are going to age, but who loses the roles, who loses the opportunities? It's sad, but that's the reality of it.
Oh, it's sexist.
Yeah, and what can we do? We could be aware of it, but can we change it? As a whole, as society, we would be able to change it, but we're a long way off from that, aren't we?
Oh, we really are. And it's really very sad. Men get more distinguished. Women get old. I've heard this. It's like, really, get over yourself. You know, it's very sad.
Oh my
God. I remember coming across one study. It was women in the workplace. So women did great, or did fine, and then around their 40s, they kind of became like unliked around between 40 and 50. And then after 50, they became more likable again because, well, they had like the grandma, like they were likable like the grandma. When they were in their 20s, they were like the granddaughter. And then again, I'm like, why don't we hear this about the men? We don't, but
Yeah,
this is
right?
how women are perceived in their careers throughout their life.
I think there's
yeah.
an expectation to age gracefully. I don't even know what the heck that means.
Yeah, exactly. Oh,
Oh my God.
or you hear the term, oh, he or she's getting a little long in the tooth. It's like, what?
What?
Oh yeah. I've heard that phrase. It's like,
I've never heard that.
oh yeah. It's like, oh my goodness, really?
Oh my God.
Yeah, I mean, everything is so superficial, and that puts an additional pressure on people. And I think more so with women. They have to not only do the best in their mind and do all kinds of things that create the burnout, but when they get up in the morning and they go to work, they got to look perfect too. It's like, how do you do that? Some days you're going to look in the mirror and go, oh, really? And just keep going,
I have a question. So back to burnout. I know in my case, the burnout was, well, obviously, I mean, I ended up drunk and homeless, and I couldn't function. I couldn't even comb my hair. If you would see my homeless picture, you wouldn't recognize me. Like there was no hope, no light. Like there was nothing left. And I was fortunate enough to be able to be in that women's shelter for a whole year, to be able to unlearn everything and then relearn who I was, and then finally learn to accept, how awesome I am, and how, know my worth, and, be able to move on from there. Thus the career change and all that. But in your case, how did you recover from that burnout, and did it take you a long time? Like for me, I mean, I know change is gradual and it takes time to heal, but it if I didn't have that 1 year stepping away from life, from bills, from everything, I don't really know if I would have turned out the same. Do you know what I mean? Like how was your process?
A very slow process. We know that when women or anybody feels overwhelmed, they're burnt out, one of the best things that they can do is just take time away. It could just be a week. Even that week away will just help ground somebody. And so we start off there. with work right now, depending on where you are, you have the family medical leave that potentially you can take. That opens up that. And then the biggest thing is just rest, really truly making yourself a priority and going back to the basics of, let me get enough sleep. Let me try to get at least 7 hours of sleep. Because if I ask the majority of people out there that feeling like they're burnt out, or they may even not realize like burnout is their term, they may just feel mentally exhausted. How many hours did you get to sleep over the past, like the average night? Was it 6 hours, 5 hours? Most people are going to say 5, 6 hours. They're not getting the 8 hours of sleep. So imagine that on a day-to-day basis, how much that's going to pull you down, right? You can't think straight. So go back to that, just going back to taking care of yourself, having a mental break is okay. It's really what is needed. So I think that everyone, how they get out of burnout is different, because how they got into burnout is different. But that time away, it helps a tremendous amount, a lot of soul searching. There's that expression, get out of the pot into the kettle, right? So you don't want to do that, right? You don't want to jump from one thing to another. A lot of times people attribute it all to their work, and the work is definitely contributing towards it. I'm not saying that, but it's, again, goes back to, you have to take some of this responsibility on yourself. You got yourself to this point. You didn't say no. You didn't put up those boundaries. You didn't communicate effectively of what you needed. And now here we are. So if you don't work on that inner work, or the inner self, the self-limiting beliefs, how you effectively communicate with others, you could go into a whole nother job a year later and still be at that. Those things follow you because you never worked with it to begin with.
Good point. And people are sleep deprived. I hear it on the news, the statistics. Most people don't get the proper amount of sleep, and it's really so necessary. And taking care of ourselves, when you think about it as children, one of the things we did every day, at least a lot of parents would insist upon it, you could have your milk and cookies, then take your nap. We don't do that as adults.
No.
So we're not doing the self-care.
Yeah, I agree. It starts with sleep, nutrition. Think about all the packaged foods that we're eating. I don't know how people feel about this that are listening, but we know that whole foods are better with us. It's like study after study shows that you are better off with fruits, vegetables, as far as snacking go, as far as meals go, or frozen foods rather than something out of a package. And yet package is easy. Package is filled with a lot of salt, a lot of sugar. It tastes good, and it's what we run to. But is that what our bodies need? No. It can maybe soothe us for a little bit. And I find that we all have those vices, right? Whether it's drinking, drugs, some of us turn to food. We eat too much.
Yeah.
We have vices, and it's basically self-soothing, right? Self-medicating, even though we could be taking drugs, but self-medicating because we are just tired of how we're feeling. We want to get away from it. So this is what we resort to.
Stay tuned for more of Women Road Warriors coming up.
Kathy Tuccaro is nothing short of amazing. She not only drives the world's biggest truck as a heavy equipment operator in northern Alberta, Canada. She's an international motivational speaker and the author of Dream Big, an autobiography about overcoming a lifetime of trauma and abuse that led to dreams of success. Kathy inspires people the world over to change their lives and improve their self-worth. Her book will change your life. She's passionate about personal growth and believes anyone can change their circumstances and overcome their obstacles if they believe in themselves. Her life will amaze you and seriously inspire you. Be sure to order a copy of her book, Dream Big, on Amazon.com. Industry movement Trucking Moves America Forward is telling the story of the industry, our safety champions, the women of trucking, independent contractors, the next generation of truckers, and more. Help us promote the best of our industry. Share your story and what you love about trucking. Share images of a moment you're proud of, and join us on social media. Learn more at truckingmovesamerica.com.
Welcome back to Women Road Warriors with Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro.
Men tend to be more okay with failure. Women will ruminate about it, and it can bring them down. Women perceive things differently than men and tend to become more obsessed with perfection. That can lead to burnout. When you realize you're experiencing burnout, you need to take some time away to reset. Rest is really important, and making yourself a priority. A minimum of 7 hours of sleep is essential. Sleep can help with mental exhaustion that comes from stress. Dr. Sharon McLaughlin is giving us some valuable insight into avoiding and dealing with burnout that's brought on by too much stress. Sharon, what's the best way to cope with all of that, to deal with stress? Certainly your book talks about it, and I want to be able to have people definitely look at that. It's called Thriving After Burnout. What do you talk about in terms of getting to the point where you can thrive?
Communication. You need to tell, like, there's always people around that are willing to help, right? And then if they're not willing to help, they really don't belong in your life right now. Or they belong in your life, but maybe not to the extent that they are. So you need to create some distance from them if you feel like they're constantly pulling you down, draining your energy, because you need to save yourself right now. So communicate what your needs are, ask for help. It could be sharing. It doesn't necessarily be like, that you have to spend money for help. It could be maybe working with other moms if your audience is women, working with other moms in the area or the women in the area that can help out with different tasks, sharing responsibilities. If you have a partner, asking them to do more like this, but not just say, I need you to do more, or yelling, I need you to do more. You don't do anything around here. When we start off with those you, usually put somebody on the defensive, right? So start off with I feel or I need, and then ask, like really do maybe sit down with a pen and pad and think about the things that potentially they can help with. When you say to someone, I need help, but you don't know how they can help you, you can't expect them to know how to help you. So think about ways that you really need help with. What are the things that you don't like doing? What are some things that can get off your plate? And then start asking, like, could you help with this? Could you help with that? I need help with this. The most anybody could say is no. It's not going to be any different than where you are right now because you're not getting the help that you need. That's why you feel this way. So it starts off with communication. And that's where I always bring that confidence in, right? Like we have to be confident enough to be able to communicate. Otherwise, if without confidence, we're just going to keep letting it go, keep thinking like I'm not worthy. I need to do this for this person to remain in my life. And if that really is the case, then what a shame that is, right? Because you're willing to put yourself aside for somebody else. I'm not talking about a child. I'm talking about a partner or, a boyfriend, a girlfriend.
Sure.
That's a problem. It really is.
Well, and I think when people get stuck in that and they don't take care of themselves, they start developing self-hatred. And that's where the self-abuse can come into play, where you're abusing drugs or alcohol or overeating. There's self-loathing, I think, that goes on because you're actually mad at yourself for not doing something.
You get mad at others too, resentment.
Oh, yeah.
Right. Resentment comes in,
yeah.
and then people are like, what's wrong with you? You're moody. No, I'm
Right.
not. Well, I am moody now. I'm yelling and screaming my head off, but why are we at this point? But again, you have to take some responsibility because you let it get to this point.
Yeah, and it can sneak up. It can sneak up on you, where it's all of a sudden, it's like the straw that broke the camel's back, and you just blow up, and people look at you like, what just happened with you?
Yeah.
Yeah.
We're laughing because we all get it, right? I'm sure your audience gets it too.
Yeah. It's like, oh my God, she's berserk. Get a chill, take a chill pill. You've probably heard that phrase before, right? But when somebody reaches that point, it's because they haven't been addressing what they need, and maybe they don't know.
Well, your show, this type of episode, will help them it brings awareness into the situation.
Yeah.
Because if they're not surrounding themselves with women that are speaking up, if they're surrounding themselves with, if they're not working on self-development and listening to some audios like this podcast is great, reading books, listening to a talk show, if they don't have these staples in their life, like great communication with other women, with friends that are going along their life in a better situation. I'm saying better because comparing to somebody who feels like they're mentally exhausted, anything is better than that, then they don't know otherwise. So when you step back, when you hear something like that, this is off, this is not sustainable for me. And then you hear a podcast like this, with what you guys are doing, with what you ladies are doing. It starts with that. Like, how do I want to make some changes in my life? What type of changes? What would that look like? Asking yourself those questions. What do I need? What does that look like?
That you're so right about that. Sometimes we don't recognize what's going on in our own lives. I know in my first marriage, like I had promised that I would never marry a man like my stepfather, who was just a monster. And I married because I was pregnant and thought it was the right thing to do. And then I ended up when my daughter was about 3, I wanted to give back to the community. So I signed up for victim services as an advocate to be, to help out for when somebody's going through such a traumatic event. Well, we had a 3-day course that we had to take. And it was in that course that as we were role playing, I recognized, oh my God, like all these things are happening in my own house. Like, are you kidding me? It took that for me to recognize what a red flag was and for what was going on in my own house, because I didn't know. So by, you're saying that people will recognize sometimes by listening to this podcast, you're absolutely correct, because just by hearing, talking to you, they'll say, hey, they'll take a minute to do some self-reflection and say, oh my God, like this is maybe this is my turning, my breaking point. Right. So, yeah.
It's important to look at ourselves and really do a self-examination every now and then.
And be honest.
Yeah. Brutally honest. Sometimes it hurts, but you gotta be.
It does.
Yeah.
It's ugly. I mean, the truth is not all rosy and pretty, right? Like the truth is sometimes it can be downright nasty and ugly and dark, and you're like, ugh. Yeah. But it's the recognition of it is the first step.
That's where change comes into play. Sharon, where do people find you? You have your podcast, you got a number of books, and certainly the new book that you have on burnout, which is called Thriving After Burnout. Where do people find all of that, and can they reach out to you as well?
Absolutely. My website is Sharon McLaughlin. That's Sharon, SHARON, McLaughlin, MCLAUGHLIN, MD.com. It has the website. I do some virtual speaking. If anybody needs a speaker, I'd be more than happy to, communicate with you and talk about what we can do as far as building up confidence in women. That is a passion of mine. It's been lovely speaking with you, ladies. I love your podcast. It's very strong. I think about the people out there that you're affecting, and it really makes me smile because it's what people need to hear. Like, nobody really comes up with these. A lot of people are untransparent, right? You think about social media, we touched upon a little bit. Everything is so glossy, a great life, perfect. But it wasn't always, if it is perfect now, it wasn't always perfect. It took work to get there.
Absolutely.
And nobody's life is perfect, right?
Oh,
very
God.
true.
That white picket fence.
Oh, yes. But see, people forget that. People forget the white picket fence has to be painted once in a while.
Love it.
Yeah, really.
Sharon, you are a wealth of inspiration and information. I really appreciate you being on the show, and you're exactly what our listeners need to hear, because they do. We want to help so many women. Well, power them on their road to success. That's essentially what Women Road Warriors is about, and I really appreciate it.
I do as well. So wonderful meeting you, ladies.
Thank you very, very much.
Yes, we really appreciate it. Thank you, Sharon. We hope you've enjoyed this latest episode. And if you want to hear more episodes of Women Road Warriors or learn more about our show, be sure to check out womenroadwarriors.com. And please follow us on social media. And don't forget to subscribe to our podcast. On our website, we also have a selection of podcasts just for women. There are a series of podcasts from different podcasters. So if you're in the mood for women's podcasts, just click the Power Network tab on womenroadwarriors.com. You'll have a variety of shows to listen to anytime you want to. Podcasts made for women. Women Road Warriors is on all the major podcast channels like Apple, Spotify, Amazon, Audible, YouTube, and others. So check us out, and please follow us wherever you listen to podcasts. Thanks for listening.
You've been listening to Women Road Warriors. with Shelley Johnson and Kathy Tuccaro. If you want to be a guest on the show or have a topic or feedback, email us at sjohnson@womenroadwarriors.com.